I heard about a whale, it's like a sperm whale, like a monster whale, that got beached in maybe Taiwan. Died there on the beach, was a scene, and the officials decided that they couldn't leave it on the beach, so they got a forklift and a big old monster truck, and they put it on the back of the truck, and they were going to take it to the lab to see if they could determine why the whale died. As they are winding their way through basically some city streets there on the route to get to the lab, the gases inside the whale that had built up, you might guess maybe the gases after a little bit of time caused the whale to decompose from the inside, which then created quite a ruckus as it exploded on a city street, creating just one really nasty mess. Now, I'm going to guess your mess when you were thinking, something goofy that's happened to you or somebody that you knew about, probably didn't rise to that level, although maybe it did. Because I think one of the things that happens when we talk about messes in life is sometimes messes happen to us. Like it wasn't really our fault. We just got caught in the explosion and we felt it and it was icky to us, but it wasn't like we did it. And then there are messes that we do, right? They're the messes that we create that are like equally like, oh man. I read this week, I was just Googling, messes, things that happen to people. I came across a story of a guy that 3 weeks into his marriage found out that he just oversaw a text to his wife from a guy by the name of Ben saying, I can't do this anymore. And so he pulled on that string a little bit, like who's Ben? Like what can't Ben do anymore? If you can imagine that, like as a newlywed. And come to find out as he pulled on that string a little bit, his wife had been previously married and had a 3-year-old and hadn't said anything to the new groom. And when he's like trying to say, what? Like we're married and you what? And she was like, I'm really, really sorry. I knew that you really didn't want kids right away. I was waiting for the right time to tell you. There never really was a right time to tell you. And if you can imagine the mess that then created for a couple just married 3 weeks in to find that out. Sometimes the messes that get created, we're guilty of. We're the ones who did it. And that's a whole different level of things that we've got to live with and try and like, oh man, how do I go forward if I'm the one who's created this, right? In this last thing, we've been looking at a series called Follow Me, where what Jesus is after is, Jesus doesn't want you to ask him into your heart. Jesus wants to know, will you follow me? I laid out a course. I went to the cross. I died for you. I rose again on the third day. I'm coming back. What I want to know, people, is are you willing now to say, I will follow Jesus? And so we've just looked at like the mark of like one of the things that should be the hallmark characteristic of us as followers is that we would love one another. We genuinely want the best for the other people. That is something very, very hard that you will do. And depending on the level of pain and angst that someone has caused you would be the depths of your soul, you'll have to look at that. It was just a week ago that I read of the church in Grand Blanc, where the guy took and rammed his truck into a church and killed some people. One of the stories I read was of a woman who was holding the hands of someone he had shot, and according to her, she looked him in the eye and mouthed the words, I forgive you. I can't even in any parallel universe get to how I would respond if in the moment I'm holding the hands of someone dying that I love and the culprit, the person responsible, is right there. I mean, maybe it was just like fear. I don't know. But I was reading her story according to her and going, wow, because that's truly messed up. You're not going to run into many more messed up situations than someone trying to take your life, and then in that moment you're trying to show them love, you're trying to show them some measure of compassion. But Jesus said, by this will all men know you're my followers, if you love one another. He didn't say by your Bible knowledge. He didn't say, hey, by this all men will know how serious you are about your faith, how many times you go to church. He didn't say how much you put in the offering plate. He didn't say if you teach kids. He didn't say if you walk the old lady across the street. He said if you love one another. That's what he said. And so I've taken that literally to heart, like what does that look like for me to be out here and wanting the best for people loved? Wanting the best for those, and it's easy when I like my people. It's easy. You get it. That's not what Jesus was talking about, because if you remember, he spoke it in the context of some guys who were arguing amongst themselves over who was the greatest. Into that setting, he said, hey, I just want to remind you that while you guys are all fighting about which one of you is the coolest, it's really when you love each other. But that's how people will know you're my disciples. You're my followers. Okay? Last week we looked at Peter, what it was like for him to follow Jesus, and today I want to look at Matthew. So if you have a Bible or an app, if you look at Matthew's Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament there, here's what I want us to understand. In the way of relationships and the way that life works out, I just did the mess map for you. There are all sorts of messes. I'm known for leaving messy sinks, right? Some of you have got messy inboxes, right? Some of you got messy stuff going here and you can't keep a calendar straight. Some of you it goes all the way into messy relationships. Some of you, it's even your own heart. Your heart's a mess. And you don't talk about it much because it's uncomfortable, but you know inside you're not in a good, healthy spot, right? There are these messes that on various levels we deal with. I want us to understand today that mercy is where the messed up meets the healer. We're going to talk about what it's like to be people of mercy and to people who have received mercy. Not a word that gets used a whole lot, but it's a big word in the scriptures. As we're dealing with life, here's what I believe that most of us want. We want justice. If somebody hurts us, you want justice, right? You want the right thing to be done. And if that means they get hurt back, we're okay with that because why? Because they hurt you. They hurt you, and you want them to hurt back. And that's natural. If you feel that way, that doesn't make you abnormal at all. I think that's the way we're wired. Some call it karma. You did this, you got it back. What's the big deal? If a cop stops you for going 15 over and he writes you a ticket, are you upset? Are you upset? Why are you upset? I'm seriously, it's happened to me, and I drive away going, why am I upset now? Because I got caught? Well, no, I'm not upset because I got caught. I don't care if I get caught. I'm upset because I got a ticket. I don't want to pay the ticket. But the ticket is just justice. I went 15 over. I got a ticket. That's just the way the world works, friends. But that's not what I wanted. What did I want? I wanted mercy. I wanted to not get what I deserve. And here's the cool thing about mercy. I love it when you are merciful to me. All day long, every day. Please be merciful to me, right? The challenge becomes when you want me to be merciful back. No way. Why would I do that? So I want the cop to patrol, and I want the cop to get bad people. I mean, I've been reading about they've stepped up traffic enforcement through Wentzville with some of the stuff going on. It's been in the news, right? And so a lot of stuff going on there. So it sounds like the State Highway Patrol has been patrolling it more. They've been writing more tickets. Don't you all want that, especially you people in Wentzville? Surely you do. You want it until the point in which time you get pulled over. And then you don't want it anymore. And that's just the way we're wired. I want mercy for me, not for thee. Okay? Mercy is not getting what I deserve. I deserve a ticket. Grace becomes, not only would he pull me over and he wouldn't write me a ticket, but you know what he would do for me? he'd give me his business card, and he would say, and if you ever get jammed up in the future, will you call me? Whoa, like a get out of jail free card? Who doesn't want that? See, that's the way I grew up. Mercy is not getting what I do deserve. Grace is getting something beyond what I deserve. Because if it just washed and would be even, we'd all be going, that's cool, right? That's fine. But mercy, not getting what I do deserve, and grace becomes getting something that I don't deserve. And God looks at us and he says, I'm going to give mercy. Matthew chapter 9. I want to tell you the story of a guy who was messed up who got mercy. Matthew's the guy who wrote this gospel. He was a Jewish guy. If you grew up in church, you know he was a tax collector. The thing that I was reminded of that was interesting to me is how did he become a tax collector? It took money. So Rome was running everything. And they needed people to be out in the community to be, if you use the word IRS, yeah, that would get you there in terms of a mental picture. Somebody's collecting money that you go, yeah, why? Oh, man, and you don't like them, right? But a tax collector would be an IRS guy on steroids because he would have the Roman government behind him. He literally would have soldiers, one or two assigned to him, that would enforce what he said. So these tax collector booths were set up along the major roads, and as you went through, you had to pay tax on how many vehicles on your car. I don't like going through the south side of Chicago, the toll road, right? The best thing I feel now is like it's on camera and I'm waiting for 3 years for them to send me a picture of my license plate, right? That's what happens. I preferred the booths because I would just go through the tax collector booth and pay my $1.20 and feel like I'm free now to drive on your road. Now I'm waiting for something in the mail or a scam on my phone, right? It's just a mess. Okay, but that's what Matthew did. He taxed you on your wheels on your vehicle, how many fish did you have, like you're selling your baskets, your agriculture, your grains, all of that stuff. And it's sort of like, well, how did he get in the business? Because it was a pretty lucrative deal. Rome said, I need you to collect this much, and anything you collect beyond that, that's on you. And oh, by the way, I'm going to give you a couple of guards to make sure that no one bucks. So when we read in the scriptures, in fact, whenever you read the word tax collector, it's coupled with the word sinner. On the social hierarchy, there were prostitutes, there were women who did stuff that no one wanted to talk about, and the next rung up was tax collectors. We're talking scum. We're talking people you didn't like. Okay, well, why didn't you like guys just doing his job? Here's how you became a tax collector. You had to buy a booth. You had to buy a station. You had to say, hey, I'm going to pay Rome so many dollars, and they're going to set me up with a couple of guards, and here's my route. Well, where did he get the money from? And oftentimes what the history tradition tells us is a guy like Matthew would have sold his land to be able to afford the booth, the business that he was going to get. How many of you would tell me right now today, you know what your land is? It's not a big deal to us. That's why we can't relate to it. How many of you are watching the fight in the Middle East? What's the fight over? Land. Why is there a fight over land? Why doesn't either Israel or Palestine just pick up and move and go to another part of the world? Wouldn't that solve everything? That's what I did. I've been in 5 homes. I've been in 5 homes since we've been married. Patty would claim Michigan. I'm like, I like to go back there for vacation, but it's not like a big deal to me. Oh, stop him. Stop, dude, stop. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to get to him. Land's not a big deal to you. They're fighting over it in the Middle East. Because in the Middle East, your identity was tied to your land. When Matthew decided that he was going to sell the family land in order to get the booth, he was renouncing being Jewish. In fact, not only was he renouncing his heritage, but he was now going to go after the very family that were all Jews. And he was going to rob them. And so he didn't get invited to homecoming anymore. He didn't get invited to wedding receptions. He didn't get invited to parties. He was no longer invited to Easter and Christmas. His family disowned him. He was hated. He was despised because he went out and he sold who he was to take money from family and friends and just rip you off. So I'm just going to ask you something. Does that guy get invited to your Christmas party? Straight up. Is he the guy that you're calling every once a month to see how he's doing? Hey, what's going on? How's the business this week? You doing that with that guy? Absolutely not, you're not. And now, when we read the story, it's going to take on a new meaning. In Matthew chapter 9, at verse 9, is Matthew's account of when Jesus asked him to follow. As Jesus went on from there, that's in Capernaum, he's out and about, he's been teaching. I think that Matthew's heard him teach before. I don't think this is the first time that Matthew's gone, oh, who's this dude? I think it's like it's been resonating with him and Jesus' message has been connecting with him. As Jesus went on, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. I read this week, I thought it was interesting. Some think that the tax collector's booth may have been like a lifeguard station that was elevated, so he could actually be seeing people coming and going. I don't know that to be fact, but it certainly would make sense, right? Because he could see you coming down the road and know, oh yeah, you haven't paid, yeah, you gotta stop here. So he's sitting at his tax collector's booth, and Jesus walks up to him, and he said, follow me. That's what he said to him, and Matthew got up and started following him. He locks the booth and says, okay, Jesus, let's go. And then if you know the story, a little bit later that day, Matthew has a party with his friends, and it may have looked like this. Let's see if we can now make this work. Here we go, ready? Crank up the volume.
Grapes? Barnaby, you eat a lot.
Very upset.
Thank you. Simon?
You know, Matthew, when you're not behind iron bars, you're quite handsome.
I agree.
What is going on?
May I help you?
We were just on a walk and we heard voices, and I thought it sounded like... But surely not.
And yet it is you. Would you like to come in?
We would never be caught dead in a...
In a what? In a tax collector's house?
Not only that, but with a... Do you know what she and he... They are...
You seem to be having troubles finding your words, man.
Why does your master eat with tax collectors and sinners?
It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick.
I must say, I am shocked. She is from the Red Quarter. Much of what is done there cannot even be spoken by my tongue or cross my lips. It is so unholy. The mere mention of it would defile me.
Sounds like a personal problem.
But him and the others he works with, they betray our people for money, and they're not even sorry.
If you're so offended, then leave. Let them speak, Andrew.
They've never offered guilt sacrifices in the temple.
What? The priest keeps records.
We checked them. Tax collectors are not welcome at the temple.
Would like them better if they made the proper sacrifices.
This is not about me. This is about what God wants.
You are forgetting the scroll of Hosea. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, more than sacrifice.
There are righteous men on the lookout for you, and they are weighing every word you say.
Is that a threat? Please let them know this, Yusuf. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners.
Is everything under control here?
Yes. We were just going on our way, Centurion.
As Primi Ordina to you.
Prime ordine.
While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and they were eating with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" And when Jesus heard this, he said, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, and not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Jesus, when he came to messed up, broken people, said, the thing that I'm bringing is not one of judgment, but of mercy. So let's unpack a little bit what this looks like for us to live as people that are merciful. Because I think one of the characteristics that ought to be true of anyone who says they're a Christian is that we're a person of mercy. People of mercy, I think, see differently. They see the world differently. They don't see tribes. They don't see labels. The people in Matthew's day saw him as a scumbag. The people in Matthew's day saw him as a traitor. The people in Matthew's day saw him as a cheat, as a lowlife. Matthew's community would look at Matthew and say, I hope you die tomorrow. And Jesus walks along and he says, follow me. And I think it would have been very, very interesting. Well, the first exchange there, did you see the tension as Matthew offered Peter some fruit? And he just sort of bristled. I can't even believe the only reason I'm here, I'm sure, is because Jesus. Because when we face people that we deem, just say it. You're next to a saint if you would say to me, you don't have people in your world that you deem unworthy. There are people that I know that if we just had an honest dialogue, you don't care for, you wouldn't have anything to do with. If you don't acknowledge that, you don't see the tension in the story. Because Jesus calls this low-life scumbag to follow him, and Peter and I'm sure the other disciples knew they weren't saints, but they were better than this guy. Why would Jesus ask this guy? What is he thinking? Doesn't he know? And that's the force even behind when the religious people come and knock on the door and say, I thought we were converted. Jesus, is that you? What are you doing in here with these people? People who live a life of mercy see other people differently. You don't see labels. I'm fond of saying God will always see your future. Satan's always going to remind you of your past. You screwed up. You watched porn. You lied. You cheated. You weren't fully truthful here. And you know what you did. And the adversary knows what you did, and he is quick to remind you. And how can we get our arms around a Jesus who would say, but I want better and I see different for you? And that's the tension in which we live with. Jennifer Connor told me her brother got baptized last week, and she was excited. The family was excited. The guy's 50 years old. 50 years old, has had some difficulty with substances in his past, and he got baptized last week at 50. And as I'm fond of saying, why would a 50-year-old get baptized? Seriously, at 50, you've lived most of your life the way you've wanted to live it. Why would you change? I get why a young person might change. I talked to a guy mid-30s who's made a shift. He's done a right-hand turn in the last year. I get that. You're still young enough to make that turn. But man, when you get 50, 60, haven't you just decided this is the life you want? And you're going to go to the grave that way? Why get baptized? My dad was 65 when he got baptized. Started going to a church that played drums. My dad was a drummer in a country and western band. Couldn't believe he would go to a Baptist church that would have a drum set in it. Once he found that out, he kept going. And there came a point when he responded to the message of Christ and he wanted to be acknowledged as a follower of Jesus. I said to him, Dad, you're 66. Why? Why? Just keep going down the path you're on. Why change? I believe that sometimes we have too many Christians who just see people with a label, and you put somebody in a box and there's no way they're going to change. There was no way my parents were going to change. I'd grown up in the church. I was in ministry. My parents had no interest in it. They weren't going to change. And then like, wow, what is this? They're going every week. That's when I find out, like, what? Dad's getting up and going, and they have a meet and greet. And Dad's the guy going around the aisle meeting people. And I seriously had to go one time to see it for myself. I did not believe it. Why? Because I believe that Jesus is still in the business of changing people. I believe that Christ looked at Matthew and said, I see different for you. I see a guy that will follow and be loyal to me and will give his life for me and will help other people discover me. How do you see people? I want to ask you a question. How do you see yourself? How do you see yourself? Are you messed up? Are you messed up beyond something good happening? You don't deserve anything good to happen, right? You don't. You don't deserve God to work in your life, or maybe just a little bit, because I don't want to go to hell. I just don't want a lot. I think people of mercy see others and see the potential that can be when God works in their life, and they're not willing to throw anybody away. I think people of mercy include other people. The Pharisees, by definition, were separated ones. The Pharisees would look at other people who didn't fit their box and say, no. Why does your teacher eat with that woman? What? Does he know? Another time Jesus at a meal, woman comes in, pours some ointment on his feet, starts washing his feet. Man, you talk about uncomfortable. Do you know who that is? Do you know what she does or what people say she does? Jesus, surely you must be ignorant, because if you knew, you wouldn't. People of mercy include other people rather than isolate. I grew up in a certain way of looking at Christianity. I had boxes. You had to check the box. If you didn't check the box, I was like, oh man, and there was all sorts of comfort and discomfort that arose in my soul depending on how you checked your boxes. And before you look at me like I got 4 eyes, which I do, I bet I'm not alone. I bet there are some of you in here and some watching online who you've got boxes, and people have got to check a box, and they've got to be a certain way, and they've got to act a certain way, and they've got to talk a certain way for you to go, oh, they must be a Christian. Oh, they're not a Christian. Funniest stories I got are refereeing with basketball guys and umpiring with baseball guys and hearing the F-bomb drop and then find out, oh, I go to church. Well, one guy said, oh, I'm a Christian. I'm like, okay. But I'm telling you, I'm just being straight. That was like, okay, how did the Christians drop the F-bomb? I don't know. They're not supposed to. Christians watch porn? Christians cheat? Christians lie? The Christians carry grudges? I don't know. Not supposed to. Jesus went about including people, the very people that I want to write off because you don't do it my way. Why would Jesus eat with sinners and tax collectors? Why would Jesus eat with broken people? It's a fair question. Here's the deal. I'm just straight. Don't answer me. Don't raise your hand. Do you think Jesus would eat at your house? Is it a trick question, sort of? Like, I'm sure he would. I'm sure, like, if I had Jesus over, he'd come over and he'd be, like, really cool. Like, oh, we're going to Mike and Patty's. This is so cool. She's a great cook. And I'll put up with Mike. Okay? But in your mind, do you have some people that you could think of that there's just no way in heck Jesus is having a dinner there? But it's not your house, right? He'd be down all day, every day, going to your house, right? You see what you just did? You live in a world of good and bad, them and us. You've got people in categories. You've got tax collectors and sinners. in your mind, and Jesus doesn't go there, but he goes to your house because you're a good person. And that's one of the challenges, I think, when it comes to living as a person of mercy, because Christ included. Remember the woman at the well? Went at midday. Why'd she go at midday? Because she had 5 husbands, because the town didn't want anything to do with her, but Jesus knew she'd be there. Jesus went. Jesus wasn't supposed to speak to her, but he spoke to her. Why does Jesus eat with broken people? Because those are the only ones out there. And don't make the mistake of thinking that you're better than broken. You're not. Your brokenness might be different than mine. I'll give you that. There might be varying degrees of brokenness. I'll give you that. We're not all as bad as we could be bad, but we're not all as good as we need to be good. And that's what you and I need to remember. Jesus ate with tax collectors and sinners because that's all that was out there. He included people. I think as we're out and we're living life, let's look for ways to include people. Some of you go and have lunch with people that, because of your nature of your work, right? And you'll go have meals. And you'll eat with tax collectors and sinners. And you might go to spots that you wouldn't otherwise go. And it's a whole different tension. I understand and I can appreciate that. But you go because of work. The true test becomes when you include some of these people in your social gatherings. And you're really trying to be friends with them, and you ask yourself, why would I do that? And here's why. Because you want to bring Christ to that relationship. Because you, as a representative of Jesus, want to enter into that world. That's why. That's a whole different way of looking at it. Jesus went to Matthew's house because he knew there was going to be people there who needed him. There were those on the outside who said, there's no way that Jesus, you should be doing that. And Jesus said, man, you need to learn something. You need teachers of the law. And here's what he said, the third thing I want us to get is that you need to go and relearn what mercy is. What is mercy? In its simplest form, mercy, as I said earlier, is just giving what someone doesn't deserve. Or they don't get what they do deserve. It's acting with compassion. It's acting with kindness. It's treating people better than they deserve. Can I ask you a question? If I were to treat you the way you deserve, what would our relationship look like? If I were to treat you the way you deserve, what would it look like? And there's a tension there, isn't there? I don't know. How do I deserve to be treated? How do you want to be treated? Seriously, anybody here want to be abused? Anybody here want to be disrespected? Anybody here want to be talked down to? Anybody here want to be yelled at? How about when you screw up? When you make a mistake? You want somebody in your face reminding you of the mistake you just made? Is that what you want? Can you understand why Jesus then would look at them and say, here's the deal, here's what I need you to learn. I need you to go relearn what mercy is. Because in the Old Testament book of Hosea, God said, I desire mercy more than your sacrifices. I desire that you would be merciful to others more than you would perform your religious duties. That means more to God. Our relationships and how we respond to one another, how we respond to injustice, how we respond to just the messes that we come in contact with, how we respond to that matters more to Him than whether you show up in church every week. Because the goal of Christianity is not information, it's transformation. The goal of following Jesus has less to do with how much knowledge you have, but more with like, how does it change your life? And if you sit and you're a great Bible scholar, the Pharisees knew all of the Old Testament. They had it down. Jesus said, you're missing it. And it created turmoil for them. They didn't know what to do with that. God values how you treat others. Blessed are the merciful, for what? They will receive mercy. That's what Jesus said. First sermon. Blessed are the humble in heart. Blessed are the pure in heart. Those are the standards by which followers live by. So I wrote in my notes here when it relates to this, that God, it said, I wrote down here, it's far easier for me to make my faith a checklist of things that I do and I don't than to give Christ my heart. Mercy is messy. Mercy is awkward. Forgiving someone is painful. Having a hard conversation is not easy. It's easy to get behind your text on your keys, and it's easy to get behind your social media and do all that stuff than it is to get in front of somebody's face and say, hey, can we just talk about this? Because I think we disagree a little bit. That's hard. But man, I can type stuff out all day because I don't have to interact with you. That's what I mean. I think mercy calls something for me that is like, I just don't want to enter into that because people are messy. I wrote here that the world measures our worth by our performance. Who are you? What can you do? How much money do you have? How valuable are you? And Jesus comes along and he says, you're valuable. You're worth something because who you are, not what you do. When you get in those conversations and you haven't met somebody, what's usually one of the first questions you ask? You know what it is? What do you ask? What do you do? Like that's the measure of ourselves. What do you do? Not who are you? Who are you gets a little like, oh man, I'm not sure really when I go there. Let's talk about what I do. Yeah, I'm a pastor. Yeah, I'm a basketball referee. That's what I do. Is that who I am? What if we became a people that was more interested in who we are becoming than what we're doing? That's what I mean by mercy sees people. Mercy calls us differently. Mercy values different things. Because at the end of the day, mercy throws parties. At the end of the day, mercy gets excited about what God is doing. Just a curiosity question. So when we did Cool in the Gang Celebrate, did that cause any tension for anybody here being in church and we're playing that song? Just honestly, am I the only one who just felt a little weird, a little off? Thank you. I am the only one. Yeah. Okay. Do you feel it?
I did.
Yeah.
But I also danced.
You did. Why did you feel the tension if you did? Why did you feel the tension? Because it doesn't fit. Doesn't fit, right? Doesn't fit in church, right? Because we don't celebrate in church, right? Well, we do, but it's subdued. I mean, I know there are some churches that get all like, well, you know what I'm talking about. And then I read somewhere where like Presbyterians raise a finger. I don't know if that's true or not, okay? There's a tension. That tension you felt, that's what they felt. 10 times more. Jesus, why would you show mercy to this scumbag tax collector? Jesus, why would you have a meal? Why would you be friendly towards these sinners, these God-forsaken idiots? And then you fill in the blank, who are the people that you don't like? Jesus, oh man, gotta be kidding me. Team's coming up. We're going to sing a last song together. Share a story with you. There was a woman in a small, tight-knit rural community. She was a single mom, and she had a baby that needed some help. Her neighbor would stop by every few days and keep the child so that this mom could go grocery shopping and do the things she needed to do. After some weeks, several weeks actually, the neighbor shared more than her time. She shared her faith, and she shared the difference that Jesus had made in her life. And this mom after a little bit of time, put her trust in Christ. The friends of the young mother then got in her face. This is what I found interesting. They got in her face and they said, "Do you know what those people teach?" And the young mom looked at their friends and said, "I don't. But here's what I do know. They held my baby." Mercy. Heard another story of a husband and wife who got in a fight, and it was a pretty serious fight. And the husband got so angry that he took his right hand, and as he went to put his hand through the sheetrock, he hit a stud. He didn't win. So he's got a mangled fist and a mess from the sheetrock on the floor. And as he tells the story, he fully expected, see, he grew up in a family that just argued everything out. And his wife grew up in a family that sort of like chilled and went quiet when anger exploded. And so what he fully expected was that his wife was going to leave him and just go let him stew. And so he's, by his own words, "I've got the broom in one hand, I've got my hand throbbing, I'm trying to clean up the sheetrock." And he said, "I felt a hand on my shoulder from behind. And it was my wife. And she apologized. And I apologized. And we embraced." And he said, as I'm reading that story, I'm wanting you to understand, as I'm trying to understand, that's what mercy looks like. It's so easy to turn your back on people. It's so easy to say they got what they got coming. I don't have to go put a hand on somebody. I can just let them stew. I can let them suffer. They deserve to suffer. But Christ calls you to something different. Followers of Jesus are called to a different kind of life. And that's what's going to be so radically different in this culture. Because I want you to suffer. I want you to feel the pain that you caused me. I want you to feel more pain than you caused me. You deserve that. But that's not what Jesus calls us to. He says, "Here, let me help you clean up the mess. I want you to know that I'm here with you. We'll walk through this together." Who in your world needs mercy? Will you have your eyes and ears open? Will you listen to people this week? Will you see if there's a story there that you can interact with? Is there somebody that needs you just to hold a baby, to be a help, just to be there for, in the name of Christ, because you know you wouldn't do it any other way? That's what mercy looks like, because mercy is for messed up people. And that's who we all are. I want to remind you the simple truth that you guys are going to sing. There's only two kinds of people that Jesus can't help. You go to church thinking Jesus can help everybody. That's a lie. That's a lie. Two kinds of people Jesus can't help. Ready? Here's the first kind of person that Jesus can't help. The person who doesn't think they got anything going on wrong. They don't have a need. He can't help them. Couldn't help the Pharisees. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were the healthy. He can't help the person that knows they have a need but won't ask. If you won't ask for help because you think he can't help, or you think you deserve it or want to do it on your own, you won't see the mercy and grace of God except for those who ask. I hope you'll ask. Who needs that message? Let's sing with these guys.